The night was quiet, and the streets hummed with the faint sound of traffic lights flickering from green to red. A sleek black sedan rolled steadily through the city, its windows reflecting the faint glow of passing street lamps. Behind the wheel sat a man named David Carter, tall, composed, with eyes that carried the calm confidence of someone who had seen the world for what it truly was. Dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, he looked like any professional heading home after a long day. What the world didn't know, or at least what this city's police department didn't yet realize, was that David Carter wasn't just any man. He was the newly appointed head of internal affairs for the department itself, the one responsible for investigating police misconduct and holding officers accountable. But to the officers sitting in the squad car across the intersection, none of that mattered. Officer Daniels had been on the force for years, carrying with him the bitterness of prejudice he never bothered to hide. To him, the sight of a black man behind the wheel of an expensive car was always suspicious. As David's sedan glided past, Daniels narrowed his eyes, gripping the steering wheel tighter. He switched on his sirens. Red and blue lights flashed violently against the quiet street, breaking the calm with authority. David glanced in his rearview mirror, instantly aware of what was happening. He exhaled slowly. This was not the first time he had been profiled, but tonight carried a bitter irony. He pulled the car to the side with controlled composure, his hands steady on the wheel. Officer Daniels approached aggressively, hand hovering near his holster, though no threat existed. His voice cut through the night. License and registration. What are you doing driving this kind of car at this hour? The tone was not a question, it was an accusation. David responded calmly, his deep voice even and professional. Officer, here are my documents. And for the record, I'm driving home from work. That's all. But Daniels wasn't satisfied. He looked at the suit, the polished shoes, the calm demeanor, and something inside him fumed. He had built his career on assuming guilt, not granting dignity. Step out of the vehicle, he barked, with an edge that was less about law and more about power. David didn't flinch. He slowly opened the door, stepped out with dignity, and stood tall. Even in that moment of humiliation, there was something regal about his presence. It unsettled Daniels, though he didn't show it. Empty your pockets. Hands on the hood. The demand echoed in the air like a whip. Cars passed by, some slowing, some ignoring. To those watching, it was just another routine stop. But to David, it was a moment drenched in history. Generations of black men humiliated under the shadow of authority, dignity stripped away on the streets they had every right to walk. He thought of his father, who had once told him, "Son, sometimes you will have to fight with nothing but your dignity. Never let them take that from you." David placed his hands on the hood, the cold metal pressing against his palms. Daniels frisked him harshly, muttering under his breath, "Figures. Always dressed up like you belong somewhere. But you people never do." The words landed heavy, not just because of their venom, but because they revealed the truth. This wasn't about suspicion, it was about racism. For a moment, anger flared in David's chest. He could have revealed himself right then. He could have ended this farce in seconds by flashing his badge. But he didn't. He chose silence, letting the officer dig his own grave with every word, every action. Sometimes, justice needed to be seen in its rawest form before the truth could break it apart. Daniels leaned close, his voice dripping with disdain. "Tell me, how'd you get this car? Don't tell me you actually earned it." David turned his head, meeting the officer's eyes with calm steel. His voice was firm but low, a warning masked as patience. "Be careful with your words, officer." Daniels laughed mockingly. "Careful? You don't got to tell me what to do. Out here, I decide who belongs and who doesn't." And in that instant, the entire street seemed to hold its breath. David stood silently, the weight of the moment pressing against him. Inside, a storm was brewing. He wasn't just standing there as another black man wronged by arrogance. He was standing as the very man who had the power to expose this officer for the world to see. But not yet. Justice, David knew, was most powerful when it revealed itself at the right time. The night air felt heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of distant traffic and the rustle of leaves stirred by a passing breeze. David stood tall against the cold hood of his car, the indignity of the moment pressed against him like the weight of history itself. Officer Daniels circled, his flashlight beam moving unnecessarily across David's suit, his face, his hands, as if searching for guilt that did not exist. "Where are you coming from?" Daniels demanded. David's voice remained steady. "From work." "What kind of work?" The question was laced with mockery. David hesitated for the briefest moment, then said evenly, "I work in law." Daniel scoffed. "Law? Don't make me laugh. The only law you'll be dealing with is the one I enforce." "Don't lie to me." It was arrogance coated with prejudice. Daniels wanted control, superiority. He wanted to remind David of a false truth, that in this city, men who looked like him did not belong in power. Another squad car rolled by slowly, its officers glancing over, but no one stopped. No one intervened. To them, it was just another stop, another night in a city where assumptions outweighed justice. Inside, David's patience burned. Every second was a test of dignity. He thought again of his father, who had fought battles in quieter ways, and his mother, who always told him, "Never let their hate become your reflection. Carry yourself like the man they cannot see, but one day must face." Daniel shoved the documents back into David's hands. "These look clean, but something tells me they're not. Seat tights. I'm running your plates." He swaggered back toward his cruiser, certain he was in control. David watched him go, his jaw tight, his heart steady. He knew what was about to happen. The computer system would pull up his name, David Carter, and with it his position, head of internal affairs, Department of Police Oversight. Minutes ticked by. The glow of the screen lit Daniel's face inside the cruiser. At first, his expression was smug, but slowly it changed. His brow furrowed. His smirk faltered. He leaned closer, rereading the information, disbelief spreading across his features like a stain. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his radio, then stopped. David stood motionless, his dignity unshaken. When Daniels finally emerged, his voice lacked the venom it carried before. Mr. Carter, there seems to be some, his words stumbled. You're with Internal Affairs?" David's eyes met his, calm but burning with unspoken power. "No, officer. I am Internal Affairs." The silence that followed was louder than the sirens had ever been. Daniels froze, the weight of realization crashing down on him. Every arrogant word, every degrading action, every racist assumption now stood exposed under the authority of the very man he had tried to humiliate. David stepped closer, his presence commanding yet composed. His voice was low, precise, and heavy with truth. "You see, officer, this wasn't just a traffic stop. This was a test of your character. And you failed." Daniel stammered, his bravado gone. I didn't mean, it was just procedure." David cut him off, his words sharp but calm. "Procedure is about protecting citizens, not demeaning them. Procedure is about justice, not bias. What you did tonight wasn't policing. It was profiling, and I will not let it go unanswered." Daniels shifted uncomfortably, his arrogance stripped away. For the first time, he looked small under the streetlights, exposed and vulnerable. David reached into his jacket and pulled out his badge, holding it up to the flashing lights. The golden emblem gleamed, a symbol of authority far greater than the officer's uniform. "Tomorrow morning, Officer Daniels, this encounter will be documented, reviewed, and investigated. And you will answer for every word, every action, and every choice you made here tonight." The officer's mouth opened as if to protest, but no sound came. The truth had cornered him, and the power he once wielded so carelessly now belonged to the man he tried to diminish. David returned to his car, sliding into the driver's seat with quiet dignity. Before closing the door, he looked back one last time. "Remember this night, officer. Remember who you chose to be when you thought no one was watching. Because justice is always watching." The door shut with finality, the engine roared to life, and the sedan glided away into the night, leaving behind a silence heavier than the flashing sirens. Daniel stood frozen by his cruiser, the realization settling in. He had not stopped a man that night. He had stopped justice itself, and justice had looked him in the eye. As David drove away, his thoughts weren't of revenge, but of responsibility. He carried with him the weight of countless others who never had the chance to reveal who they truly were, who suffered silently under the shadow of prejudice. Tonight, he had exposed one man, but his mission was larger than that. His mission was to remind the system that dignity cannot be profiled, justice cannot be silenced, and truth cannot be stopped. The city stretched before him, lights flickering against the dark sky. To some, he was just another driver heading home. But to those who would hear this story, to the community waiting for accountability, to the people who carried scars of the same injustice, he was proof that even in the face of prejudice, dignity could rise, courage could prevail, and justice could not be denied. The night returned to silence, but something had shifted. For Officer Daniels, it was the beginning of a reckoning. For David Carter, it was another chapter in the long fight for dignity and justice. And for every listener who would one day hear this story, it was a reminder: never underestimate the power of truth, and never forget the strength of those who carry it. Don't just watch, stand with us. Subscribe to Black Unity.